let's see. The Biden administration aims to reclassify marijuana as less dangerous drug. So what is this even getting at? Is this a move towards legalization, or what's going on?
Basically to lower it off the schedule from a dangerous drug like heroin or LSD to a lower schedule where you can get it in a prescription. Because right now, about half of the states already have it legalized, either medicinally or recreationally. In 2022, the Pew Research Center did a survey, and 88% of America and just recently said, hey, it should be legal either medicinally or recreationally. I want to make myself clear, I'm not advocating drug use. I'm just talking about the general aspect of this. This is a section in my class in terms of deviance that we talked about, and this is like one of the biggest things I'll talk about. And Howard Becker, a sociologist, he just died recently. He wrote an article in 1953 in terms of, he was a jazz musician going to these jazz bars playing piano, and he wrote a paper about it. He's like, look, it's basically how people act towards you about this. It's not that it's a bad thing per se, it's just how people treat you or whatever. It's called labeling theory. But they're just lowering it from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, and you can get it for a prescription.
Wait, what was the number from what to what?
From a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3.
Okay.
Yeah, Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. So Schedule 1, it's along LSD and heroin. And it's been like that since 1970. Okay. Right? Because, Nixon and the war on drugs and stuff like that. And in the 70s, Nixon put together, or he commissioned, it's called the Schaefer Commission. All right. And the Schaefer Commission basically said in their findings that, hey, marijuana should not be illegal. They said that, if there's small remuneration, it shouldn't matter or whatever if people sold it to each other in small amounts, whatever. But I'm paraphrasing, it shouldn't be legal whatsoever. But Nixon and Congress, they suppressed that report, right? You know how they put together these commissions. Hey, look for, find out what's going on with this particular issue. And that's what the Schaefer Commission found. The government, Nixon, and the Congress, they suppressed it. So this all is coming to fruition now. I'm not surprised that they're heading this way for several reasons, and the article mentions it. One, Biden is trying to get support from the younger voters because he's lagging behind. Oh, yeah? And vote under 30 voters, because they believe in liberalization of marijuana at higher rates. So not surprised by that.
Yeah, and so let's see. So now this is interesting. This gets into the question of states versus the federal government. And so, of course, some states it's legal. And then the federal guard, do you know exactly what's the interplay here if the feds reschedule this? How would that affect something like Texas? I mean, it's not going to I don't think they could just say, hey, it must be legal in Texas, right?
Well, yeah, and there are some technical issues they were saying here. It still has to go through a whole bunch of processes. But Merrick Garland put a proposal out, and it would have to be finalized by the White House. And this is an ongoing deal. And they probably won't even do this. They're just putting it out in the ether so they can say, hey, look, what we're trying to do is it's basically, performative or symbolic. Yeah. But nevertheless, I would assume, I'm not a political scientist, but I would think that the states have a right to say, hey, no, we're not going to allow this or whatever. But I think here in Texas, some jurisdictions, they do have some legalization aspects. If you get pulled over and you have that, you won't go to jail or some stuff like that. You may get a ticket, depending. Because I know, and we're more conservative state, of course, but if you go to certain jurisdictions, they're more liberal, Austin and some other places like that, of course.
Yeah, and so it looks like if the federal government goes easier on marijuana, it looks like it would just be harder to it would be easier to maybe evade various restrictions. I guess you could, I don't know about cross-border trafficking of marijuana. It suggests that big marijuana companies could make it easier for them to be in business and to be in the nationwide business of producing marijuana.
They can they can use it on their taxes now because now they can't do things like get what's those exemptions because of their employees and stuff like this. It's illegal. You can't do that. Okay. So now they would be able to use the tax code or whatever if you have a marijuana business. So that would change the game as well. Again, I want to make it clear we're not advocating. We're just looking at it. Yeah. And this goes back. There's no way. There's no way this should be legal. It should be illegal in the first place. In my view, based on just the history and things like this. And some people, you got two sides. Hey, it's a gateway drug. Other people say, hey, not so much. It depends on your perspective. But Biden said, he was quoted saying, it doesn't make sense that government controls pot more tightly than cocaine or fentanyl. right? And he pardoned a couple years ago, he pardoned like thousands of people convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. And he wanted the regulators to, loosen that particular law, if you will.
Okay, so yeah, definitely people could be busted under federal law if I guess they're on federal land or going cross border. Let me see from this article here. The new government policy could affect everything from marijuana cigarettes to pot-infused beverages. Pot would remain illegal under federal law without other changes by Congress still. So it looks like this is just a move in the direction. It could be more about what trend we're heading towards here.
And I'm not surprised, because when you think about when marijuana, even before 1970, Reefer Madness, when that came out, I think that was like in the 30s. You heard about Reefer Madness?
I've heard about that.
Yeah, so that was a propaganda film, right? And I watched it. It's ridiculous. You smoke marijuana and then you end up murdering people. It was like beyond ridiculous. But that was more of a Christian, biblical nation at that time. Now we've become more secularized and less of that. So it makes a lot of sense that we will be trending in this direction. So again, is that bad? Is that good? That's not my deal to say, but that's just my thought process on that.
Yeah, I mean, culturally, definitely. I mean, states have legalized it, and then honestly, even here around Texas, a lot of times I'll be out and I'll definitely smell it. I'm like, okay, so and and I know people. I meet people where you can kind of smell it. I do jujitsu and I'll roll with people. I'm like, okay, you can't hide it. I can smell it. Right. And then there's the gray area where there are also CBD is big, and then some of them have either traces of THC and things like that. So it looks like there's this big gray zone being created, and
even here in Texas with the CBD.
Oh yeah,
so even here in Texas,
that's a big industry here. I see a bunch of stores just cropping up.
I'm like, man, I wonder if they're gonna get raided, but I don't know too much about the whole CBD deal. I don't think THC is in it. Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, from what I hear from people, they say that there's like a maximum amount of THC, but then there's also like some chemically similar to THC, and so there's a lot of like gray area stuff. They'll be like, this is legal, but it'll come up on a drug test, and you might, your employer may not like it, but they're in a store, and they sell these things in stores. So I mean, I would assume that they're not breaking the law if they're sitting there selling it in a store.
Right.
But the law has not specifically banned certain formulations, which some people claim do something for mostly like pain or something.
Right, and for what I understand, it works really well, like the CBD and just marijuana itself in terms of THC. I mean, they give it to AIDS patients to build their appetite and stuff. So there's definitely medical reasons for marijuana for sure.
Yeah, I remember in California when it started with medicinal marijuana, and I guess there are different ways you could roll out the use of medicinal marijuana. With California, I remember it was just if a doctor writes you a prescription, you get it. And then people would say, oh, I'm feeling anxious. I'm really nervous about it. And then there'll always be a doctor say, okay, here's your prescription. So I'm thinking that if Texas wants to do it but doesn't want, everybody to just be able to claim and get it, they have to write a law where they specifically put down, here's an exact condition, cancer treatments and various injuries, but maybe not something that is unprovable, like in a way like anxiety. It's something that somebody can just say, oh, hey, I have this.
It's funny, when I first came to Texas, when I came to Houston rather for college, this was in third ward by my college. It was had to be like early 2000s. And it used to be like this long line at this particular place, like this little, I don't know, it looked like a little apartment, but I guess it was like a quote unquote a doctor there or whatever. But come to find out, they were standing out there to get lean, promethazine, I guess, right? And they say, hey, I'm sick or whatever, like you said. And then it was a long line, like just to go and say, hey, I need this or whatever to put it. Basically, they're saying they're sick or whatever, they got some issues, but they were getting like purple stuff, or they call it lean or whatever. And obviously that got shut down, so I could see that happening here. Yeah. Hey, I don't feel too good. My stomach hurts or whatever. I got glaucoma. Can you help me out?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that people suffering for horrendous conditions and tremendous pain should have access to this. And I think it's possible to write a law that would largely, make that accessible to those people without just any random person being able to.
Well, that's medicinally. I guess the question is, what about the recreational part? I think that's what people be asking. And I'm personally, I would say recreational and medicinally. Just let it be free. A lot of other countries have like decriminalized like hardcore drugs. I don't know about that, cocaine, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But particularly this, where there's actual real science behind, particularly, marijuana helping you out medically. Why do you have it there? A lot of it was due to racism in terms of why it got outlawed. It was due to, a lot of other things. So, cultural prejudices and stuff like this of the time with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the time and whatnot. And the marijuana in the 60s, that was considered like the drug. Like, you think of the hippies and stuff like that. You think of Woodstock, right? And that scared a lot of the, bourgeoisie class at the time. So that was considered like, okay, they smoke weed or whatever, those people are bad or whatever. So that's where you get this idea about that.
Well, now it's going to be boomers smoking out. People in their 60s, like, and then there's going to be a backlash. Kids will be like, "Oh, marijuana is so boomer.
Yeah,
I don't do that stuff. That's an old person." But I think sort of a counter argument, just to play devil's advocate. I think people always say, "Okay, so what about kids?" Not exactly sure about the evidence, but do we want kids whose brains are still developing? If we legalize marijuana, marijuana will become like the new vape, right?
For sure.
So many kids are vaping now, and the question is if there's like marijuana shops open like there are like in New Mexico, where they're just everywhere, will kids have? I mean, I think. Clearly, kids will have more. They'll know somebody who's old enough, whatever 18 or depending on what age restriction is, and then it'll just make it more accessible, more socially acceptable, and then so much like vaping, we'll have more kids on marijuana, and then the question is, what are the long-term implications of that? So, is there a way to sort of legalizing it for adults, but creating some like a firewall, so to speak, of trying to reduce the amount that will trickle down to the kids?
I'll always say it comes down to parents and, things of that nature. I mean, cigarettes, alcohol. I mean, you got a lot of other vices. And again, I keep advocating. I'm not advocating for this marijuana aspect or whatever, but I just feel like that we need to be sensible. So you can look at other vices, pornography, things like that, but it comes down to the parents and things like that as far as like, hey, teaching them the right way to go. Now, we can't control every aspect of our kids' life, particularly when they get teenager and stuff like that. But you can at least like guide them where they should go and like say, hey, you might not want to do that or whatever case may be. But then you get in peer pressure situations, go to college and stuff like that. You have to make a decision, yes or no, if I'm a young person. So I don't know about legislating morality. I think that becomes an issue. Like, hey, what can we do about this situation? It comes down to parents and personal perspective.
What would you say if you had if you were in charge and you could pick the age? Would you say 18, 21?
18.
18,
for sure.
Now, what about alcohol then? Shouldn't that match alcohol?
So
I don't know.
No, dude, like I think it was like 2008, 100 college presidents. I'm talking about at major universities, Duke, you name it. They came out and they were pushing the government to lower the drinking age to 18 because they felt that if that happened, then binge drinking on college campuses wouldn't be so prevalent. But that didn't happen or whatever, right? So, 18, you can go to war and die at 18, but and this is one of the biggest arguments, but I can't drink alcohol at 18. I can't, buy cigarettes. I guess you can buy cigarettes at 18 or whatever, but.
And Texas moved it to 21.
Oh, they moved it to 21?
Yeah,
okay.
which actually surprised me. But yeah,
I'm not surprised by that. But what about vaping? I don't know if you can get a vaping pen at
I don't think you're supposed to,
but you can probably find one.
Because I guess it still lacks. People can still get it online and stuff. So that's the sort of the big challenge. That
I will say 18, man. You're an adult. I graduated high school when I was 19. I was held back younger, but 18, you're an adult technically. So why not?
Yeah. I mean, the common response is like, oh, in Europe and all these other countries, people are drinking. I remember this I remember there was a tennis player, Martina Hingis, in the 90s.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, she won her first major at like age 16 or something. And I think she was pro like at 14
Didn't
or 15.
Didn't she get stabbed in the back or something like that?
No, that's Monica Seles.
Monica Seles, okay. Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah, that was a different story. But Martina Hingis, I think she was from Switzerland, and so she was like 14 or 15. And she won a tournament in the United States. And they asked her, "Oh, so what are you gonna do now that you won?" She's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to the hotel room and have a glass of wine or something like that." I think she was like 15 at the time.
Oh, wow, that's good. That's
and they're like, crazy. "Oh, I'm not sure." But yeah, I mean, it is definitely it's something maybe we have to learn how to deal with, right?
Yeah, man. And again, I just know the history mostly behind it or whatnot, and it was a lot of propaganda behind why it was illegal. And the tobacco companies, they're going to fight it as well because they don't want to have any competition or whatnot, I would argue. But it's sensible it's people in jail. I teach in prisons.
Okay.
Man, there's people there, man. They probably got busted for weed, and that culminated, or because they had other things, now they're in there, right? There's people in jail for having marijuana that shouldn't be in jail, right? So, yeah, man, it just doesn't make sense to me. And you can tax it, you can regulate it, and keep it like that. Just like cigarettes, probably worse than weed. Obviously, some people will say no, but you got cigarettes illegal, alcohol is legal. You can get other types of drugs, so why not do that as well?
I mean, to sort of widen the scope of it in terms of concerns about kids. I mean, I would say marijuana, I would almost put that in the same category as like, this might bring out the haters, but social media and video games.
No, for sure.
I was actually listening to a podcast. I think it was, he's super big now. His name is, I think, Andrew Huber. He's a PhD in neuroscience or something over at Stanford. And he was saying that, playing video games gives people a bigger dopamine boost than cocaine or something like that. When he was talking about how it's sort of addictive and how it affects your brain and sort of the mental reward system. And so I'm thinking of, video games are almost, at least for many people, like a type of drug. And like, so, there's marijuana, there's other types of drugs, but then there's also video games, which are totally legal, and then the more important part is, kids can access it. If they're at home and they could access it, 24 hours a day or whenever they're allowed to. And it doesn't create a huge stink. You can't smell like, have you been playing video games? Right? So, I could see the argument of, if we're going to allow people to play video games, which seems to have, for many people, an addictive element, and, why not marijuana?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. To kind of steel man that, if you will, some people say, hey, well, I'm playing video games. Hey, maybe it'll get me addicted in my mind or whatever. But if I smoke weed or whatever, that's harming my lungs. It's harming my internal organs and stuff like that, as opposed to just me playing. I'll probably hurt my fingers or whatever.
Use a bong. No, I don't know. They can come up with a healthy, there'll be, there's like vapes and stuff now. I mean,
you got edibles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, so the health argument could break down with, I would say the bigger effect would be what effect does this have on a developing mind? I've heard some people throw out the idea that it could maybe increase the chance of some type of developing schizophrenia or some other thing. So that's, something important to consider.
Memory loss.
Oh, yeah.
Memory loss.
I would just hope that, as we move towards, I would say that, I don't want to say it's inevitable, but it feels inevitable that Texas will at least end up severely reducing enforcement. That's usually because the politicians may not have the guts to go full on legalization, but, start looking the other way and then, de facto legalization.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I just hope that during that time we sort of, especially parents, come up with systems in the same way, my kid, I severely restrict his video game, like literally 2 hours a week.
Oh wow!
Literally,
that's good.
2 hours
Albert,
a week.
That's real good.
And he just got, and even with that restriction, he's like, okay, I want to spend all this accumulated Christmas birthday money on an awesome PC gaming system.
Yeah.
And like, you realize that you have two hours a week to use that thing. Is like, yeah, I still want it. And
that's good. That's real good.
Although I was thinking that, I mean, that's proof he's addictive. He's willing to. No, I'm kidding. But
that's real. 2 hours a week is great, man.
Yeah. And so I got to tell him, all right, only 2 joints a week or something. I don't know. Got to restrict it and edibles only until, and you work your way up. I don't know. I got to work.
That's good. You got to cut this out.
And with that, any other comments?
Oh man, that is gold.
All righty, so we talked about Gen Z and probably something that relates also to Gen Z with this whole marijuana move. So two interesting topics. Ron, thank you for coming on, man. That was great having you.
Man, that was fun, dude. That's one of our best ones. That was awesome, man.
All right, man. Peace out. Have a good rest of your semester.
Yes, sir.